Okay, before we start the main event with Matt Levine, I want to spend a few moments. First, I want to introduce myself. I want to introduce Bob O'Shea. I want to spend a couple of moments on the mission of the O'Shea Center for Credit Analysis and Investments. And then we'll get to Matt Levine. Hey, Doug. Thanks. Thanks, Fisher. Come on. Doug Green, everyone. Okay. We were waiting for you. I'm glad you came. Everything okay? You're good? Okay. Okay for me to start? Proceed. Okay, proceed. Okay, so we're already 2 minutes behind because of him. It's okay. I'm a professional. Okay, let me start off with introducing myself. And I'm going to be really brief because, let's face it, I'm sort of famous. I think everyone knows me. I'm the director of the O'Shea Center. I'm a partner at Silver Point Capital. And most importantly, I'm the best-selling author of the Credit Investor's Handbook, a tell-all book on my time at Goldman and Silver Point, and like any great international best-selling novel, it's got everything you would want. It's got sex, it's got drugs, not me using drugs. It's got intrigue, it's got a plot twist at the end that I'm not going to talk about it. And from what I heard, I haven't read it, but from what I've heard, the New York Times, Vanity Fair, and Bloomberg has said it's a must-read for 2025. And fingers crossed, Universal and us are talking, and hopefully it'll be a movie out in 2027. So that's me. Bob O'Shea is a little less famous, so I'll spend a little more time talking about him. But Bob O'Shea is the quintessential Fordham alum. His story is the American dream. His grandmother was a maid at the Waldorf Astoria. His father was a New York City cop. The only way Bob could afford to go to college full-time was on a track and field scholarship that Fordham gave him. I met Bob in 1998, and he was already a legend on Wall Street. He built the bank loan trading desk at Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs made him a partner at 29 years of age, the second youngest partner in the history of Goldman Sachs. As a second act after Goldman went public, him and another young partner, Goldman, Ed Muley, left and they started Silver Point Capital. They grew that business from 120 million of assets under management in 2002 to $40 billion today. But what I most admire about Bob O'Shea in my 27 years of knowing him is not his financial success, is how he lives his life. Bob O'Shea married his high school sweetheart and is still married to her. They went to Fordham together. They had 4 wonderful kids, 3 sons. All of them went to Fordham. 2 of them, Connor and Parker, I was lucky enough to teach in my class. A daughter, Grace, who wasn't Fordham material but did okay, went to what I think, or I heard is an okay school, University of Pennsylvania. And I think she's sort of got her act together and is doing well. And Bob has always embraced Fordham. And he's always embraced the Jesuit values of service to other and giving back. So now I want to tie me, Bob, to the O'Shea Center. And I love teaching. Why? I just love being in front of people that have to listen to me. So being a teacher is just phenomenal for that. And I was teaching, in addition to being a partner at Silver Point, I taught 1 night a week at Fordham University. And then in the next semester, I teach 1 night a week at Columbia Business School. And Bob came to me one day and said, we're not doing enough for Fordham. And I said, okay, what does that mean? What do you want to do? And we just brainstormed. And we decided to fund the Center for Credit Analysis and Investment. I want to be clear, Bob did not want his name. He did not want it to be called the O'Shea Center. I insisted, because I said, we're going to end up having to fund a lot of dollars, and if my name's on it, everyone's going to come to me to fund it. If his name's on it, everyone's going to come to him to fund it. So I pretended that I didn't want my name on it and insisted we put his name on it. But just between us, I was just playing him. But anyway, we set up, it's true. But we set up this Center for Credit Analysis, and there's 3 legs to this stool. First was, let's develop and offer a credit curriculum. Every other business undergraduate program offers courses in real estate, offers courses in value equity investing, offers courses in private equity, but no schools that we knew of offered a single course in credit analysis or a concentration. So it was just a business decision, supply and demand. There are a lot of jobs for credit analysis, and no schools are teaching it. So we said, let's do that. That was leg 1 of the stool. Leg 2 was, let's help brand Fordham. And the reality about Fordham is, and of the people here, only about 1/3 of the people went to Fordham. So 2/3 are here, because of me and a little bit of Matt, but mostly me and a little Matt. But anyway, we said, let's brand Fordham. Let's host these types of events and get really interesting people up here on stage with me, and let's remind the kids that went to Fordham and the people who didn't go to Fordham the true competitive advantage. And it's not the credit curriculum. The real competitive advantage of Fordham is Fordham kids have grit. They're going to school in the Bronx. They have no sense of entitlement. Andrew Pace, Andrew, are you here? Oh, there he is. Andrew Pace, my first TA, when I was teaching at Fordham, and he was valedictorian of his class. In his graduation speech, he really summarized up what makes Fordham students different. And he said, we go in and say, put me in, coach. Give me a chance. I won't let you down. There's none of that self-entitlement. There's, give me a job and I will run through a brick wall and do a good job. So we want to brand that, and that's the second leg of this stool. The third leg was, again, Bob telling me we need to embrace this Jesuit university, this concept, this motto of service to others, and we got to build that into your curriculum. And I'm like, Bob, I'm a distressed debt investor. I don't even know what that means. But he explained it to me. And we really try to do it. Every year, the kids in the course do a research project and pick the region of the world where there's illiteracy. We team up with Build On, a great organization, and Build On finds a community within that region that wants a school, that is willing to put in the labor to build the school, and is committed to send their kids to school, both boys and girls. Because a lot of these regions, if there's a school, only boys go. And then the O'Shea Center funds that school, and we funded 4 schools. And we're doing another project that we're just starting off with the Bronx Research Institute of Community Solutions. And we have a professor working with students, working with this group to identify real issues in the Bronx, and then the students with this organization puts together a business plan, and if it makes sense, we, meaning Bob O'Shea, will fund it. So that's the O'Shea Center. Thanks for laughing. Appreciate it. So now let's go to the main event, Matt Levine. We are proud, the O'Shea Center, in conjunction with Fordham's Corporate Law Center, with both Richard Spear and A.B. Martella run that program, and the Gabelli Global Institute for Security Analysis, run by my good friend Paul Johnson. We are proud to host Matt Levine. Not since Michael Lewis left Salomon Brothers in 1988 to become a writer has an ex-Wall Streeter gotten such a fanatical following of his writings. Matt, in 2010, was a brilliant but obscure banker in the structured derivatives group at Goldman Sachs. At age of 33, right when he was on that, about to make the really, really big bucks, he just quit. And he told his wonderful wife, Sarah, I'm quitting to write a blog. And he had the confidence or the stupidity, depending on how you look at it, to do that. So in preparing, I'm going to get to you, Matt. Matt's like, Jesus Christ. I thought we were going to be interviewed. I'm getting to you, Matt. Relax.
I got nowhere to be.
Oh, it gets worse. As I drink, I get funnier. Or I think I get funnier. But anyway, in preparing for this, I asked Matt, introduce me to people who know you better than anyone else in the world. So I did a lot of work. He introduced me to his wonderful wife, Sarah, who's brilliant. She went to Harvard Law. At the age of 30, in her 30s, she argued a case in front of the Supreme Court. She was not shy to tell me she's a much better poker player than Matt ever will be, and she's a super nice person. He also introduced me to his friend, Mary Childs, who is another journalist, co-host of NPR's Planet Money, wrote The Bond King, a really fascinating book on PIMCO and Bill Gross, and to his boss, who was supposed to be here and blew you off, Tim O'Brien. So I'm not even going to talk about him.
That's fine.
And then in addition to that, I interviewed people on trading desks, both at Silver Point and out, and said, tell me what you think about Matt Levine. So with that little long but really eloquent intro, I'm going to start. So Matt, I interviewed all these people. And I started every interview with a simple question. Tell me what you think of Matt Levine. Every single person said the same thing. Matt Levine is brilliant. So my first, wait, that gets an applause? Like we are building schools in places where kids don't get an education. We don't get one applause. I tell this guy that his wife thinks he's brilliant, and that gets an applause. But anyway, I'm going to recenter. Matt, people clearly think you're brilliant. Yes or no question. Are you brilliant?
No. I don't know. I don't think of it that way.
You got to speak up.
Okay, sorry. No.
Okay, I'm going to have a couple. So Matt Levine said no. I don't think I'm brilliant, in case you can't hear him. Some follow-up questions. Where'd you go to college?
Harvard.
Harvard.
Sorry.
That's a good school.
Sure.
It's no Fordham, but it's a good school.
Okay.
And you got to take the SAT to go to Harvard. What did you get on the SAT?
I got them all right.
You got them all right. So you got a perfect score.
Yeah.
Okay. You graduated Harvard and you did what?
I taught high school Latin.
You taught Latin. Okay.
Brilliant.
You then went to Yale.
Yep.
Yale unambiguously is the best law school in the United States of America. It goes Yale, it goes Fordham, and it goes Harvard. So you were at the #1 law school in America. You got to take the SATs, yes or no?
The LSAT.
LSATs.
Yeah.
What'd you get on the LSATs?
A 180.
A 180.
The good
I'm not a lawyer.
That's good.
That's a perfect
Yeah,
score.
yeah.
Okay. How'd you do at Harvard?
I did.
You were ranked
You're
number
building
one.
to the punchline. Yes, I
You
may
were
have
the
had best GPA.
valedictorian.
Yeah.
You and Andrew Pace. Andrew Pace was also the valedictorian
Right.
of Fordham. But Andrew, what'd you get on your SATs? he got one wrong. Okay, so I want to be clear. I asked you a very simple question. Are you brilliant, yes or no? You said, no, I don't think so. But the reality, people say you're brilliant, but you are brilliant. There aren't many people who go to Harvard, get a perfect SAT, get a perfect LSAT, teach Latin, or go to Yale. But you're humble, and I respect that, because everyone says, Michael, you're humble. But I want to be clear. You're insulting me. And you're insulting everyone in the audience when you say I'm not brilliant. Because the cumulative property of mathematics says if A, being you, is greater than B being me, and you're not brilliant, and A doesn't equal brilliance, then B being me, that means I'm an idiot. And if I'm an idiot, then 90% in this audience is one below that. So one, I'm going to re-ask the question. Are you brilliant?
Yes.
Perfect.
I do think you meant the transitive property, though.
Thank you for proving my point. I'll explain it to you after, Doug. Okay. No, hold on. Okay, I want to go to your childhood.
Okay.
Where'd you grow up?
Long Island.
Long Island.
So also, wow, nobody. All right.
And this is a really serious question. Did you have a happy childhood?
I think so.
You did. Because the reason I ask is a lot of brilliant people find it hard to connect with normal people, you know, and you have like Van Gogh, you have Isaac Newton, you have Elon Musk, who you write about all the time, who unambiguously is a brilliant, but like Sam Altman will say, but he's extremely unhappy. You didn't find any struggles you were able to adopt and just be a normal kid, or did you always have something that was a little different about you?
I thought you were going to say most distressed debt investors had unhappy childhoods, but no, I was a weird kid. You know, I was like a nerdy kid, but I don't know. I always had friends and like felt okay about it. I don't know. I was never. I don't know. I grew up in a place where like it was kind of okay to be a nerdy kid, and there was a big, you know, I did like the debate club in high school, and like I was like cool on the debate team, so it was fine.
Tell me something interesting about you that no one knows pre-college. So it could be elementary school, middle school, high school. Something that people would say, oh, that's interesting.
I don't know that I have anything like that. I mean, I feel like my path is very determined. Like, two things that I think of are, I read Liar's Poker and Barbarians at the Gate at a very young age, and like, I was like, ooh, this sounds interesting. Like, not knowing anything about it, but like, it made an impression, and then I forgot about it and filed that away for 15 years, and then I was like, ooh, that was interesting. And the other thing that I read that made a big impression on me was, there's people who read The Lord of the Rings starting at the back, the appendices. I feel like some people here know this, right? Like, there's some people who like read the appendices of The Lord of the Rings first and are like, ooh, Elvish grammar. And like, that sets you on a certain path in life, which does run through the classics department, but like also other things.
So
I feel like not a lot of Elvish grammar fans here. Okay, that's surprising.
Well, let's go to the classics.
Sure.
You majored in the classics
Yes.
at Harvard.
Yes.
And I Googled it, because when you said you majored in the classics, I was thinking Rolling Stones, The Who, Bob Dylan, but that's classic rock.
Yes. Yeah,
That's
different.
not the classics. So one, what is the classics? What does that mean, majoring in it?
I usually say Greek and Latin poetry, although also like archaeology and history and stuff. But yeah, Greek and Latin, like the culture of ancient Greece and Rome.
And was there an end game in plan? So in other words, you had just said, I read Liar's Poker, I read Barbarians of the Gate, but then you went to, all joking aside, the best university in the world, but you majored in the classics. Was there, I'm going to do that and use that to go to law school, or did you just pick the major because you were intellectually curious?
There was no game plan. I was like the most unworldly undergraduate, and like classics is really, the best thing about it is you get to be extremely unworldly. You know, like at Harvard, most people take Ec 10, like the introductory economics class, and like you go to lunch and 3 people are talking about their Ec 10 class, and I would like leave because I wasn't interested in that. I was like really, you get to like pretend you're a, 19th century dandy when you're reading Greek poetry for your college major. No, I liked math and I liked English and like poetry and stuff, and I did it all wrong. I took a too easy math class and a too introductory English class, and they were sort of big lectures that weren't very engaging, and I was like, well, classics combines reading poetry with like looking at tables of Greek letters, so it's kind of like math and physics and kind of like English, but like the classes are smaller and more engaging. So I sort of stumbled into it and then kind of doubled down on being a like, impractical, like pure intellectual, college experience. I didn't like look for a job.
No, so there
Until
was
I
no
graduated.
strategic element.
No. When you ask like, was I thinking I'd go to law school? No, but like, if you major in classics, you're sort of condemned to go to law school because that's like the thing you can do.
And,
So I should have known I was going to law school, but I didn't.
but you didn't. And then when I interview people about you, especially people who are fanatical fans and read your work every day, the word that comes out after brilliance is funny, witty, humorous. And you were at Harvard where National Lampoon, is that what it is?
The Harvard Lampoon, but yeah,
The Harvard
National
Lampoon.
Lampoon came out, yeah.
Is like the epitome of that.
Oh yeah.
Did you try out?
Oh,
Were
yeah.
you a part of that?
Oh yeah, no, I tried out and did terribly. I was not comedically mature when I was 19. I think about this a lot, like, you try it for Lampoon, like you have a blank sheet of paper and you write jokes. And I wrote bad jokes and I didn't get on the Lampoon. I never write jokes now, rarely write jokes now. Try not to write jokes now. I like, the thing that I do is I try to write about things that are interesting, and often they're interesting because they're funny, and I try to cultivate their natural funniness, but I don't try to write jokes. I don't try to write comedy about Wall Street. It's just like, try to write about Wall Street comedy. So I did not have that perspective or like that, opportunity when I was in college. So I just did a terrible lampoon tryout.
And were you devastated?
Devastated is a strong word, but yeah. Like
only because I got to
Yeah,
assume there were very few failures in your life.
No, there were plenty.
There were?
Yeah. That was a big one.
That was a big one.
Yeah.
Now, I want to go back to something you just said. You talked about, I don't try to be funny, but I write about things that I think are funny.
Yeah.
Tell me, what is the funniest thing, something you wrote about where you weren't trying to be funny, but you thought the whole aspect of it was just hilarious?
When I qualified that I don't write jokes, I do write fake dialogue, and when I write fake dialogue, often Elon Musk is one of the speakers. When I write fake dialogue, I'm trying to capture like the essentials of the situation, but the situation is always funny. And so the dialogue that I give to Elon Musk is often extremely funny, I think. He doesn't, as far as I know. But so there's a lot of like, I don't know, like when Elon Musk was told by the SEC not to tweet anymore, and then he kept tweeting, and there was a lawyer who had to review his tweets before he sent them out. It was very evident that that never happened one time. But like, there was a guy who had that job, right? And like, so I wrote fake dialogue for Elon Musk being like, can I tweet this out? And the lawyer saying, I was first in my class at law school, and like, now this is my job. And so I wasn't, like, that was just like, I don't know who the guy was, but I'm sure he was first in his class at law school, Like, I mean, I was just, Elon Musk was absurd, and I was trying to just distill the absurdity of that.
Is Elon Musk your favorite person to talk about?
For a long time, I would have said yes. I feel like he's taken a dark turn and no longer find him that fun to talk about. But yeah, I mean, that wasn't a joke. That was like, he's taken like, it's less funny now. I don't know, like, it's less funny now. He still comes up a lot because he's really interesting. Like, in addition to being funny, like he really, what I say about him, what I used to say about him, which is still kind of true, is that he's a very, very, very smart man who like is not ever constrained by the normal way of doing things, which in, electric car manufacturing has been like hugely good and successful. And in corporate governance and securities regulation and M&A law has not been without success. But has been, more mixed, and gives me a lot to talk about because I'm like, that's not how mergers work. But he's like, why can't mergers work that way? And like, he had a case. So I don't know. He continually produces interesting things to talk about.
Okay, so we talked about Matt Levine as a kid, Matt Levine in college. You've graduated from Harvard. You've graduated valedictorian, very similar to Andrew Pace.
Sure.
And you then went to teach Latin.
Yeah.
And for me, and I wrote you about this, but
This is by the way, I say you're condemned to law school, but like you could also teach Latin if you have a classics major. And I was like, oh, I'll teach Latin.
And I actually emailed you about this, and you ghosted me, but that's
Sure.
fine. But it made me visualize one of my favorite movies, Dead Poets Society, where Robin Williams is a teacher in a all-boys high school, and he's teaching them to think about the world, to be innovative, passionate, and carpe diem, and that seemed Latin to me, but I'm not 100% sure.
It's Latin, yeah.
But was that what it was like? Like when you went into a high school Latin, who were you teaching? I can tell you this, my sister and me and my other sisters in Brooklyn, we didn't take high school Latin.
I would say
You
that
did?
my experience was, Julia did. I would say my experience was like pretty much exactly the opposite of Dead Poets Society. I did have one student say to me, Mr. Levine, you're my favorite teacher. I just wish you taught something interesting. Which is like a real knife to the heart. No, it was, because like early Latin, you're teaching, grammar. And I assume that people who do that for their careers have both out of experience and out of personality the ability to make that come alive. But I was like, I think it's interesting. You don't think it's interesting? All right. So I was not a good Latin teacher. It was striking to me how hard it is to be a teacher when you're 22, because the kids are basically your age, and when they make fun of you, when they made fun of me, I made fun of them back, and so it wasn't, but also like I laughed, like I was not cut out to like impose discipline on high school students, so it was pretty bad, but it was fine. Like they had fun, I had fun, it was fine, but I was not cut out for it.
You did it for how long?
For 1 year.
1 year, then you went to
Toward the end of the year, they called me in and they're like, we can't renew your contract. I was like, good, I was meaning to tell you I'm going to law school, so it was fine. Very amicable parting.
Okay, you went to Yale, then you went to work for an appeals a court judge.
Yeah.
And that's where you met Sarah.
Yeah, we organized the clerk poker game together. She's much better at poker than I am.
Yeah, that doesn't shock me.
Yeah.
No,
columnist.
I'm not.
It's plausible I'd be good.
I'm not insulting you. I'm complimenting her.
She's good.
But you met Sarah.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. Like, did you ask her out? Like, did the young Matt Levine have game? Like, tell me about the courtship. Like,
the young Matt
did
Levine had no
did you
game.
read her a poem from your
No.
classics? Like, how did that all work? I gotta send you a play. Before Sarah, you were a player, yes or no?
No, I had no game. She was dating someone. We organized the clerk poker game. We played
Wait,
poker every
she
one
was
thing led to another.
dating someone? So you stole
This has taken
Sarah
a terrible
from
turn.
someone? You ruined this poor man's life? You?
Michael, are you drinking 2 whiskeys?
Yeah, well, no. I'm too deep since we sat down. I'm 4 deep since I came here. But I paid the $25 registration
Were
fee.
you a player?
And if I need to get an IRR on that 20, and I had to pay for my cheap sisters. So when you add it all out, I'm at break even at 5.
Okay, all right.
But this
not
isn't
quite what I was getting at, but okay.
This isn't about me. This is about you. So tell me, did you ask Sarah out? Did she ask you out? Give us a little.
I asked her out, yeah.
No one else is listening. It's just between us two.
We,
Okay, we'll move on. We'll move on. I'll ask Sarah afterwards.
She's mic her up.
Okay, then you jumped from the working for a judge to Wachtell.
Yeah.
Was that driven by money? What drove you at that point?
Well, okay, so the way it works is like you clerk for a year after law school, but like you line up your firm job before that. So I was a summer associate at Wachtell. And I definitely was intrigued by the fact that they paid twice as much as all the other firms, because that seemed like more money, which I wanted. But actually the reason I went to Wachtell is like, so I like interviewed for jobs, and I was like, no one will give me a job. I'm a classics major. I'm very unworldly, and I don't know anything. And then every law firm gave me a job, in part because I had like good grades at Yale.
In part because you were brilliant,
yeah, sure.
but go ahead.
But like, whatever, like they gave everyone at Yale a job. It was really easy to get a job back then. And I think it still kind of is at Yale. But anyway, so I got offers at like 10 good firms or whatever. And at 9 of them, your summer associate job is they take you to lunch, and then they take you to drinks, and they like take you to team building exercises, and like you get very carefully curated projects that make it seem like you know what a law firm is like. And at Wachtell, they just put you to work. And I was like, well, that sounds less pleasant, but like if I'm gonna do this, I wanna know what it is. And at Wachtell, I would know what it is. And if I went somewhere else, I would have more lunches, but not know what it is. And so I went to Wachtell for a summer, and I like pulled all-nighters, but I also, you know, there's a partner there who tells a story that like we were doing they were working on a deal, and the senior partner on the deal was like, "Where's the summer associate?" And they were like, "He's negotiating this agreement with the Skadden partner right now," which was like kind of true. So I was like up all night, but I was like doing deals, you know, I was like a summer associate. So I got to the end of that and I was like, I kind of love this and it's fun. So the money helped, but I actually thought it was fun. And I do think that, you know, there are a lot of bad things about Wachtell, like the hours, but like it was fun. And like they showed you that as a summer associate. They showed you like you were doing interesting work.
And how long were you there before you jumped to Goldman?
I was there for like a year and a half of real time plus like some summers. But yeah, I was there for, it ages you in dog years, I say, but it was.
But if you were, it's fun. Why did you decide to jump to Goldman Sachs?
Why do you think? Because you're wrong, but why do you think?
What?
Why do you think?
Oh, it's got to be money.
Wrong. I loved Wachtell, but I was working like, I was like having mental and physical breakdown from just the amount of the work. And I got a call from a guy who I had worked with at Wachtell who had left after like 6 months for Goldman. And he said, "Do you want a job?" And I said, "Is it better than this job?" And he said, meaning like, are the hours better? And he said, "It's a little better than this job." And I said, "When do you get in the morning?" And he said, like 8:30. I was like, "That's worse." And I was like, "When do you leave?" He's like, "Yeah, like 9 o'clock." So that's much better. I was like, "What about weekends?" And he's like, he walked me through the hours, and I was like, "That does sound a little better." And so I tell people I'm one of the few people who went to Goldman for the hours, but I really did.
Yeah, because I was like, that was not my experience at Goldman, but I blame you, Bob, because the hours were not better. But
well, they might have been better than Wachtell. But so yeah, no, I went to Goldman for the hours, and I got what I bargained for because the hours were better. I definitely also thought like, ooh, the money here has to be better than the money in law. I don't know that that was a correct bet. Like I think that by the time I left Goldman, I was making more than I would have been making at Wachtell, but I did go to Goldman in like July of 2007. So I had sort of a depressed salary path for a while. The money was not amazing for most
And
of
how
my time.
long were you at Goldman?
Like 4 years.
4 years, and then you decide, I'm going to quit Goldman Sachs, and I'm going to write for Dealbreaker, a blog.
A blog.
And so one, you've never done that.
That's right.
So you didn't like test it out, you didn't put your toes in, you just told Sarah, hey, by the way, I'm quitting my job at Goldman Sachs. Now, Sarah had a boyfriend when you met and dumped that guy for you. And now all of a sudden you're saying, hey, by the way, honey, love you. Yes, we want to get a house in the suburb, get married, have kids. I'm leaving to write for an obscured blog. Tell me about, one, your thought process, two, the conversation with Sarah, and I might ask you how you reacted, but let's start with you given your mind.
You should ask Julia. I was talking to Julia, your sister, who worked with Sarah before this.
And let me give a plug for my sister, because she's a little bit like me who loves attention. Except
Julia, everybody.
She's not nearly as good as I am. But Julia worked with Sarah, Matt's wife, at the Federal Defenders. So they know each other well. And started on the same day. No one.
And they went to some exercise class, and Sarah said, my boyfriend is quitting his job at Goldman to be a blogger. And Julia was like, well, sorry, that's not going to work out. So the actual process is slightly different, which is that I became very burned out and also not very good at Goldman. Like, I was a pretty good, like, derivative structurer and like guy doing work, but I was not a very good VP of like flying around the country, meeting with CFOs and pitching them on convertible bonds. So I was like a much worse VP than I was an associate. So like I was not like long for the firm, and I also didn't like it and was burned out. And so, and we didn't have kids, and we had a relatively inexpensive life, and I was like, I'm going to quit. I'm going to find myself. I'm going to work on my novel. I'm going to like take 6 months off with money I've saved and not do this anymore and figure out what's next. And so I went to my boss and said that, and he said, well, don't quit now. Like, take a sabbatical. Take some time off and like figure out what you want to do. And then if you want to quit, you can quit. And I was like, that's very generous of you. And he said, yeah, go back to the desk and we'll figure out the sabbatical. And then like, I worked for another month, and then I saw Dealbreaker was hiring. And I was like, well, that's even better, because like I can quit and figure out what I want to do with my life. And in the meantime, I can try something and get paid a small amount of money.
But what did you could say, I'm not going to answer you. What does Dealbreaker pay you? Like when they call, like I know my negotiations with Bob O'Shea, and they're real dollars. Like when you're talking to Dealbreaker, are you like...
They were not real dollars.
Are you like 20 thou and you're like, no, 40 thou?
Okay.
Like just give me a sense.
They were not a great business, but they did pay me $75,000.
Whoa!
Yeah, it's fine.
Whoa, 75 thou.
This was somewhat less than I was making at Goldman. There was no like comp negotiation. Like I was not like, I'm doing pretty well at Goldman, you better match that. No, like we all understood what was happening. No, it was a significant pay cut, but it was less of a pay cut than quitting to do nothing would have been. But no, I had saved money, and I was like, I can give this a year and then figure things out. And I worried a little bit that I was burning my bridges to the financial industry by working at Dealbreaker. I probably worried too much about that. Like, actually, Dealbreaker, like people read it, and I was like, oh, fun, Dealbreaker, right? Like, no one cared. But no, I figured like I had a year to figure things out, and it took about 2 years to figure things out. So yeah.
Fascinating. And then it all worked out, clearly.
Yeah.
Maybe not for Sarah, but for
fine.
you.
She's fine.
For you, it obviously worked out. You really...
I spend more time with my kids than I would have if I had stayed at
No,
Wachtell.
look, I'm not judging.
Sorry.
I'm not judging you. It's crazy. But it's worked out.
Yeah.
You got this. Like, I am shocked. Like, I'm a little jealous of your popularity, because I had told, Doug Green, my sister's husband, said, Matt Levine is really famous. And I was like, he's sort of famous. I'm really famous. And then he said, no, you're not famous at all, other than students that you force to buy your book. And I said, there's some truth to that, but you're really famous. Like you, and I talked to Sarah about this, and I talked to Julia and Doug about this. Like you literally walk around New York City and people stop and like scream out your name, like Matt Levine, and like people are like, come to you, and you're at a restaurant. Like, is that cool or is it annoying? Now, what Sarah told me, it's 99.9% 20 to 30-year-old men. So it isn't like you got groupies, like it's not like you're Aerosmith at the heyday, but is it sort of cool?
I get some emails from women being like, my boyfriend would love a video message from you for his birthday. No, I will say that, so you sent me a list of like topics and questions beforehand, and I was walking here, I had it out in my hand, I was looking at it.
Of which he ghosted me on.
And I was looking at like this section, like thinking about how I would respond to that, and I was walking down Park Avenue, and a guy was like, I'm a big fan! He's a bond trader at Citadel going to a company softball game. So I was like, that's something. I don't know. That's a story I can tell. No, it's really cool. It's like, I think that there's a level of fame where it's like hard to walk around, and And then there's a level of fame where you walk around and once in a blue moon, people are like, yeah, I like your work. And then you're like, oh, that was cool, right? Like, it's great. Like, I can, you know, like, I'm not, like, it's the ideal level of fame.
Perfect.
Like, I wish I was sometimes I wish I was a little more famous so I could, like, get into restaurants easily, but, like, I'm at a pretty good level of fame.
So now I want to shift to your writing.
Okay.
You write an incredible amount. Like I just did back of the envelope math of you publish your column 4 days a week.
Yes.
You average that you would write a full book every 2 months. If a
Sounds
book
right.
is around 100,000 words,
right.
is that fair?
Trying to do the math. Yeah, that's
So you
probably,
write
yeah.
a book every 2 months. 2 months, there's 12 months in a year, so 12
it's probably a little
divided
more
by
than a
2.
book every 2
So
months.
that
for
would
sure,
be
yeah.
literally writing a book, if my math is right.
Yeah.
Every year writing 6 books, which is staggering. Like, how do you do it? Do you have a staff or people that are doing research for you? And they're obscure topics. Like one day you're talking about Fannie Mae, next day you're talking about Jane Street doing a trade in India, the next day you're making fun of Elon Musk.
Often on the same day.
Yeah, and that's what also shocks me. You don't just write one topic, you do 3 topics a day on average.
Yeah.
And Tim, who I hate because he didn't show up, Tim's only criticism of you was he writes too much.
I do. That's true. I will say, like, okay. There's no staff really. I mean, there's an editor, but like I do all the research and all the typing. I find that it is much easier to write more things than to write fewer things. I find that it seems to me that the hardest job in journalism is to have like a weekly column at the Times or whatever, because you have to write about the most important thing you have to choose what is the most important thing that week, and then you have to have the most important thing to say about it. And you have to say the most important 700 words about it. I don't have those constraints. Like I can write, you know, a long piece about Jane Street options trading in India, and then also write like literally some short jokes about Elon Musk. And when I don't have the most important thing to say about the most important topic of a day, I can write jokes about 4 other topics. And I find that like really liberating, and it allows me to like sit down with a blank piece of paper, blank CMS screen, and just start typing about stuff. And often it works out that I just start typing about stuff, and halfway through it I'm like, yeah, this is good enough to lead the column, it's fine. And sometimes that doesn't happen, and then I'm like, well, I'm leading with something that isn't good enough to lead with, but then I do it again the next day, you know? It takes a lot of pressure off when you're not writing 1 column a week, but writing, you know, 15 different things in a week at a level, at a range of seriousness, at a range of research, at a range of like topics, you know, it's more fun and easier to do that way. Tim is right that I read too much, and I'm sure people would be happier if it was shorter, but that would be harder.
And do you have constraints? So you went from Dealbreaker, and I'm assuming Dealbreaker was do whatever you want. Does Bloomberg, I mean, it's a global platform. Do they have constraints? Do people, have you ever gotten where someone says, I don't want you to write about that?
I used to tell people that our constraint at Dealbreaker, like what we were allowed to do is we were not allowed to say fuck in headlines too often. Sometimes, fine. At Bloomberg, if I have a block quote where someone says a swear, I have to like run it by someone, you know, prefer not to say the swears. I don't think I've almost never been told not to write about a thing. I think Bloomberg is publicly known has a policy of not covering itself. So every so often there will be something that is about Bloomberg that I would, you know, in the abstract find interesting, and I won't write about it. But
Give
we
me an
don't do a
example.
lot of crimes.
Give
you
me
know?
an example. I don't even know what that means. Like, and the something about Blue. Oh, you mean Michael Bloomberg?
I
the
don't think I would
Bloomberg?
ever be tempted to write about him, but like, without getting into specifics, someone did.
No, get into specifics. No one. It's just me and you. It's just me and you.
There's someone did a financial crime that involved like altering Bloomberg pages and like doctoring Bloomberg pages for his clients, and I did not write about that because it was a little too close to being about Bloomberg. But no, there's very little of that because because like I read about it, and I would say there's no constraints. The constraints besides not swearing are there's a little bit of like the journalist. At Dealbreaker, I enjoyed not spelling out what EBITDA stands for, and at Bloomberg, I grudgingly spell out what EBITDA stands for. But I find
Andrew, what does EBITDA stand for? Andrew, don't embarrass me.
I should all read his book. It's a good book.
Oh God.
But no, like I've actually found it really useful because like at Dealbreaker, I was really writing for an audience of mostly young financial industry professionals, and so you could assume a certain shared knowledge base. But at Bloomberg, I am writing for a more general audience with obviously like an enormous core of like it's mostly financial industry professionals, but being slightly broader targeted has been really useful in that you're not being like, oh, the EBITDA was blah, 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 but you're trying to like explain things more from first principles. And I have found over time that like I have a lot of audience of like tech people who like how I write about stuff, but who don't necessarily come to it from finance and don't necessarily, I mean, they really know what EBITDA stands for, but like they don't necessarily know finance stuff. And it's a good, the trying to write for a somewhat broader audience has been a good discipline. But there's no constraints on what I write about. I was saying before, like the right way to run an opinion section is like you find some people who you like their writing and you like let them write. And if you stop liking their writing, you fire them. You can't like manage how they write or what they write about. You gotta just, let people do their thing.
Have you ever written something and then regret? Because you are sometimes, not always, but sometimes sarcastic, snarky. Have you ever written something and then after just felt bad about it?
It's funny, I feel a little bad about writing about the Jane Street options thing because people are so mad about it on both sides, and so like I have a lot of pushback from people being like, you're too nice to them.
And
that's the opposite of
this is the India trend.
Yeah. Like
so give just 30 seconds
not
on
worth
what
it.
that was and why people are so emotional about it.
Jane Street made $1 bajillion trading options in India. The traders who did it left for Millennium, and Jane Street sued Millennium saying our secret trade was so good that you stole it from us, and it's secret and proprietary, and we can't even say what country it was in because that would blow up our spot. And then it came out that it was India, and the Indian securities regulator, quite understandably, was like, that doesn't sound good if you were making billions of dollars doing something secret. And so they looked into it, and they determined that Jane Street was doing market manipulation. And I wrote, somewhat more sympathetically, like some of what they were doing looks like a legitimate arb, but like it is often the case that when you are trading a derivative and trading an underlying, a thing could be a legitimate arb or legitimate hedging activity or market manipulation, and it is like somewhat difficult to disentangle just from the trading activity. And some people were like, no, it's not, it's easy, they were doing manipulation. So I'm in a series of Twitter fights now. So that's what I regret. To your question of like, do I ever regret being sarcastic about people? I do occasionally feel like, that's a person. But I will say that like, some of my favorite interactions are when people get arrested for insider trading and I write about them, and then like they get out of jail and they email me and they're like, you got me, that was pretty funny. I feel like with the probable exception of Elon Musk, the people I write about have pretty good senses of humor.
Now, Sam.
That's not always true, it's mostly true.
Sam Bankman-Fried, you did a podcast with him, which I actually listened to, which was like almost mind-boggling in one, and again, I'm I pride myself on being of moderate intelligence, but really successful, so I'm actually proud
It's the way to be.
of that. But I barely understood. I understood everything you said. I barely understood anything SBF said. But to me, it sounded like he was saying, "Oh, this is all a Ponzi scheme." So you know
Well,
what
okay,
I'm talking about.
To be clear, he described something in crypto, not even something he was doing, but he described this thing in crypto, and it was very cynical. And I said to him, I'm pretty cynical, which I am, about crypto particularly. I said, I'm pretty cynical about this, but that was much more cynical than I would have said, than how I would have described it. It sounded to me like you're saying, I'm in the Ponzi business and it's pretty good. And he was like, that's fair. And then later, so I don't really think that he was describing, like he was really describing something else. And in fact, like the day after, crypto people got mad because they're like, Sam Bankman-Fried is calling DeFi a Ponzi and really he's the bad guy. But like, in fact, you know, in retrospect, it's sort of, when I said things like, it sounds like you're saying I'm in the Ponzi business and it's pretty good, it sounded like I had more insight than I did. I like Sam Bankman-Fried,
And so did Michael Lewis. I mean, he
Yeah,
made
yeah.
it clear.
He's
I
quite charming.
loved Michael Lewis's book.
Me too, yeah.
And he got all this bad press of he was sympathetic.
Yeah.
But I think I personally said, he didn't say the guy did things right. He just said, I liked the person and I found him interesting. And so did I.
I found his book made me slightly increase my estimation that Sam Bankman-Fried was guilty. But also was very sympathetic to him.
And in that book, he mentions you.
Yeah.
I mean, he basically says, and tell me if I'm wrong, he says, and I love Michael Lewis, and I think you do too.
Oh, yeah.
But he says in the book, I'm not even going to attempt to explain crypto. Just read Matt Levine's 40,000 word article in Business Week about it, which I read, and it's the only time I actually felt I understood crypto.
Yeah, I'm in a Michael Lewis footnote, which is satisfying. Actually, Michael called me before, at some point, I know people who know him, and he called me and he's like, thinking about writing about crypto, is this Sam Bankman-Fried character interesting? I'm like, yeah, he's pretty interesting. He's covered a lot, but he's not covered by Michael Lewis. It's probably be good for you. And then I was like, where's my royalty check? When he sold the movie before writing the book.
I want to ask a couple of general questions, then we're going to spend 10 or 15 minutes with audience questions. And I want to be clear, if anyone asks you a question you don't want to answer, just say, I don't want to answer.
I can do that.
But you have 3 children, right?
Yes.
You have a daughter and 2 twins.
Yes.
So put them aside for now. What do you like? Why is that so funny?
Yeah, it's kids. Yeah.
Put them aside.
Yeah.
And what do you like to do outside of writing, because everyone says spending time with my kids. I love that, right, Mary Kay? Mary Kay's my wife. I'm a good father. I love my kids, blah, blah, blah. But outside of that, what do you like to do?
I do want to say that we're teaching our kids poker, and it's really satisfying.
Because
with 5 people, you have a game. You can play poker every night. It's amazing.
Let me just say something. I got to imagine your kids' DNA are crazy, right? You're brilliant, but Sarah and Julia said this to me. Julia, my sister, who's worked with Sarah, said, you're interviewing the wrong spouse. If you think Matt Levine is brilliant, talk to Sarah. She's 10 times smarter than that guy.
This is why I said I'm not.
It's harsh, but did you say it, yes or no? It's true.
No, I'm very boring.
And she's much more personable, too.
That's true. I'm like a super stereotypical suburban dad. I read and I make cocktails.
Okay, I'm gonna have to go to questions soon because we're out.
I do make cocktails.
Someone get me a drink. Someone get me a drink.
He's not kidding. We're
ahead,
stalled
I'm
here
sorry.
until he gets a drink. Yeah, no, I don't know.
I forgot what I said.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's fine.
Well, no. My question was, what do you like to do outside of writing, outside of your family?
I read a lot. We have a very good cocktail program at the house. Like I make a lot of cocktails. I don't know.
You read a lot.
Yeah.
What is your favorite book?
I feel like people who read a lot don't have favorite books. I don't know. Okay.
What is your favorite book?
Guys, in all
Like, what is your favorite book? I don't know. Could it possibly
This was
be
just
the
that.
Credit Investor's Handbook?
Guys, I will say that in preparation for this, I did read the Credit Investor's Handbook, as I assume you all have. It's really good, right? Like, it's good. It's good. You don't know that. You don't know me. I would not have said that if I did
No.
not believe it.
No. I actually have been told, holy crap, thank you. You're the best. No. I was told, first of all, Doug Green, who came late, we had to hold off this whole thing, my youngest sister's husband, who, we sort of like, I gave him, and he's in the business, I gave him a signed copy of the Credit
I
Investor's
also have a signed
Handbook,
copy.
and he said, I'm never going to read this. And then he introduced me to you, and he was snarky when I sent you a book.
There was some snark in the sending of the book, but yes, I now have a signed copy of a very good book. Yeah.
But you loved it. Like, yeah. But is that fair?
Yeah, fabulous.
Thank you.
Must read.
Let's
Book of the year.
open up this only because I'm now past the 5-drink limit. Let's open this up to audience questions. Oh, Doug Green. And we have a microphone, but go ahead. Tell me and I'll repeat it.
Okay, so this is in regards to
To the Credit Investor's Handbook?
I have another question. Ask me later. This one is in regards to the India trade that James did.
Okay.
Because I read your piece today, and I've been following it, and I couldn't wait to find out what the trade was.
Sure.
So wait, let me repeat the question because Doug is not mic'd.
No, go.
Doug Green.
And if I had a mic and a drink, it would be much.
Do we have a mic? Yeah, let Doug, because he wants the spotlight.
Come on up.
Thank you. So in regards to the India trade, you wrote today, and I was very excited to learn what the actual trade was. And you wrote a whole paragraph talking about what they did, and then you wrote 2 things after that saying, having read that, you should all know what the trade was, obviously. I knew, but just so the rest of everyone else here knows, could you tell us what the trade was?
Oh, I mean, there's disputes about the nuance, but what I said was like, Indian options trade something like 300 times as much volume, like deltas, as the underlying stock, and just from knowing that, you should know that it's easy to manipulate options prices. Sure. Because you can buy a little bit of stock and it'll push the price up, and then the options settle against the stock, and so the options price goes up. So if you own a lot of options, you can buy a little stock and make your options much more valuable. And that is what they're accused of doing. And while I think there's a lot of nuance to whether that's what they did or whether that's all of what they did, like, that is a problem in a market when a derivative trades much more liquidly than the underlying.
You understand now?
Go ahead. Did you have
Thanks,
a
Doug.
question?
Matt, thank you for the interview. I've been reading for almost 10 years, so thanks for the daily lunch spicing.
Thank you.
My question is, do you have a nemesis? Do you have someone who like answers all your emails in the negative and tries to fight you on your points?
That's so funny. No, my nemesis is Elon Musk. No, no, I will say no, except that market structure brings out people who hate me. Like market microstructure. Like, so I used to write more about like US high frequency trading, and there were like 3 guys on Twitter who were like, he's getting paid off by the market makers. He is scum. He's the worst journalist in the world. He's in the pocket of big market maker. And those people came back out this week, so that was fun. But otherwise, no. I probably write less about market microstructure than I used to, in part because that was an unpleasant experience. Like, people get more mad about high frequency trading than anything else that I've ever written about. Like, I make fun of crypto, and all these crypto people are like, man, I love your work. I like write about market makers, and people are like, you're killing babies. Anyway, but also I don't write about that much because like there's like 20 people who hate me and like 15 people who love me, and everyone else finds it super boring. So I don't write about it that much.
Matt, it's so great to meet you in this occasion. Thanks for Michael's invitation. Michael already answered my first question, which is whether you loved math, and you got your perfect scores on both LSAT and SAT, so that answered that.
Yeah.
My question was, what was attractive to you about both math and Latin? And to you, what was interesting in the book of Barbarians at the Gate? Thank you.
What was the last part?
What was interesting to you about what was written in the book Barbarians at the Gate?
Oh, okay. What was interesting to me about math and Latin? As I get older and kind of figure out what it is that I'm doing, I like to like understand systems and like try to look at things in first principle ways. And I think obviously math is like the academic discipline that is that, you know? And so there's like something attractive to me about that, about like abstracting away from details to get to like the fundamental insight of a thing. Latin is not like that at all, but it feels like that when you're starting and you're like, instead of like, you like see grammar as like a, you know, a list of tables, you're like, ooh, this is like so structured, which I think appealed to me. This is like what I was saying about Lord of the Rings. Like, you read the tables at the back, it's like, oh, that's like, you just like built this, like how the sounds work. It's so structured, it's nice. So that was what was appealing to me, and that hooked me in, and then later I found that reading Greek poetry was fun. What was interesting to me about Barbarians at the Gate is that it made like business seem like really exciting. Like they do as good a job as anyone has ever done of like dramatizing a takeover battle and making it seem like, ooh, this would be a fun thing to do. And I remember, I've written this, like, Barbarians has a lot of like, you know, the company's board, the special committee shopping bidders against each other in like somewhat tricky ways. And then later when I was a lawyer, like, I remember like having 2 bidders in 2 different conference rooms, and they would like, be like, this is our best bid, but if you shop to the other side, it goes away. And we'd be like, we have to go to the bathroom. And we'd go upstairs, and you know, like, I was like, this is like living the dream, right? Was it? I don't know. But like it imprinted on me at a young age. I was like, oh, this is cool. Like, we're like, you know, doing big business deals. I think it's like, that book like really captures like doing big business deals as like an exciting event. You know, I've written since like, every so often you see people do fake takeovers, and like fake takeovers are often like stock manipulations, right? Like you say a company is being bought, you buy the stock, you say it's being bought, the stock goes up, you sell the stock, but almost no one succeeds in doing that, and a lot of people do it without buying the stock, and you're like, why? And the answer is because like they have a dream of doing a takeover, and they don't like actually work at a private equity firm, but they can like pretend to. I always found that sympathetic.
Hey, thanks again for coming here tonight. Obviously, in this kind of modern day world, we've been kind of corralled into the thanks, THX, you know, in emails and in communications. We've kind of forgotten how we gain our voice. So whether or not we're a 21-year-old who needs that job on Wall Street, or, you know, a 60-year-old towards the end of his career, maybe you could give us some advice about how you gained your voice even if it's just in this kind of financial storytelling setting, and how that might employ towards, building some better connections, especially emerging out of this pandemic era where we were all reduced to just faces on screens. Thank you.
Well, I'm just a face on an email. I think that it's interesting, like I started as a blogger thinking, well, I write funny emails to my friends. I can do that for a living. And then there's this transition period where you're trying very hard to be funny and interesting, and it doesn't work that well. And then eventually you just you hit upon something that's so interesting that you just want to type it, and you don't want to be funny and interesting, and then that's much funnier and more interesting. And so the process of finding my voice as a blogger was largely a process of stopping trying to be someone else or some idealized version, and just actually writing what I thought. Which is not to say it's simple, it's just it's largely practice-based more than anything else. I don't know how to build connection, man. It's I don't know how to deal with the AI world any more than anyone else does. I was saying to someone earlier, within journalism, I'm in a good business because people associate a person with what I type in a box, and they're I want to hear what that guy thinks. So I'm a little bit more sticky than just providing information that ChatGPT will wash away. But no, I don't have a better answer than that. No.
Hi, just wanted to mention I'm also a very big Lord of the Rings fan, so I appreciated all the references this evening. But my question is, you mentioned earlier about how, when you made this kind of transition over to writing, you were thinking about, do I have to be the person that knows the most about this topic, writes the most important 700 words on this topic? How do you determine what you write about, and why do you think people keep coming back to you and keep seeing you as kind of this influential person? How do you make that determination about what you're going to speak about each week, or each month, rather?
A lot of it is I have some mental models that are useful for some things and less useful for other things, and I try to write about things where I have something useful to add, where ideally it's a topic that has gotten a lot of attention, where I know more about it than a lot of other people, but those are rare, right? Why would I know more about a thing that gets a lot of attention than anyone else, right? Every so often you have a nice little useful thing, right? Where I was sort of the axe for some of the GameStop stuff because I'd written a lot about market structure, and some of the GameStop stuff is market structure stuff. And when GameStop became the biggest story in the world, I could be oh, gamma squeeze, I know about that, right? So that was useful. But a lot of the time, it's not the biggest. It's interesting. Jane Street is the Indian options trade that I've written about this week is the biggest story in the world in a tiny, tiny, tiny corner of my readership. But it's not front page news in the real world. A lot of what I'm doing is there are people who come to it for a certain sensibility and a certain set of things, and I'm, and it's my sensibility and my set of interests, and so I'm servicing my interest and also their interest. There's a lot of, Elon Musk does a certain number of things where I'm well, I got to write about that because that's a very money stuff thing. People send me things and they're this is the most money stuff story ever. And sometimes they're right because they have a pretty good theory of mind of what I'm interested in. And so when I'm writing about the stuff that I'm interested in, where I feel I have value to add, often people respond to that. But I mean, the other thing is Bloomberg is so big that if there's a Fed decision, a lot of people will probably write some good stuff about the Fed decision, so I don't have to, I can just choose the stuff that's slightly more off the run, but is interesting and is related to my models of the world and how the financial system works.
Okay, one last question.
I think that's me. First of all, I'm disappointed that you did not choose Klingon over Elvish.
Yeah, it was never my thing. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about your network, who you talk to, where you get your ideas, and what do you balance? It just can't come out of like reading the Times. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I was something like I'm always surprised because I'm like, much more of what I write about is like from the front page of the Wall Street Journal and like the Bloomberg website than that question sometimes implies. Like, yeah, I read about the stuff that's in the news. A lot of it is like, there is stuff that's in the news that's on the front page of the Journal that is in my wheelhouse or where I have a differentiated take on it, and so I do write about that. I definitely have people I talk to. I know a lot of people in the high-frequency trading community. But I definitely have people who send me stuff, and I'm like, oh, this is interesting. The danger there is like, you get some people who are like, you should write blah, and I don't want to ever write that. I do it occasionally, right? Occasionally, like people call me, I used to do it more. Like people will call me and be like, oh, you should write this is really interesting. And they'll talk me into it being interesting and their side being right. And then I'll write it and I'll be like, yeah, that was just what that guy thinks. And I don't like to do that, so I try not to do that. And so, I've been doing this for a long time, and I have a lot of readers, and so like, when I have questions about a thing at this point, I can call people and usually get someone to answer, but the process does not start with like a network or with people talking to me. It starts with like me like waking up and reading the internet and being like, oh, that's interesting. That said, people send me stuff. I tell people a lot, like, my favorite emails have the subject line, you will enjoy this 8K, because that means like, they know what an 8K is. They know that like, it is possible to enjoy an 8K. And they have some theory of mind of me that's like, this is the sort of 8K that Matt would enjoy. And so I almost always enjoy those 8Ks. And also like, when you say you'll enjoy this 8K, they're not like making an argument. They're not like staking out a position. They're not like, you should say this is good. They're just like, this is funny, check this out, right? So then I can make up my own mind about whether it's funny, and it usually is.
Okay, look, we've covered a lot. I want to thank you, Matt. I want to end with one last question. You, every Friday, do a podcast. Sometimes you're just talking with your co-host, sometimes you're interviewing someone. Is there a question you would, if you were us, you would have asked yourself that I didn't ask or the audience didn't ask? What was that question? And I'll decide if I want to hear the answer.
I'm not a very professional interviewer, but when I have like, asset manager people on, I like to ask them like,
have you had me on? No.
Great question.
Never mind.
I don't know. I'll check. I'll check the archives. I like to ask them like, what do you do for a living? Like, what is your economic function? Because I think it's interesting to ask like a hedge fund manager how they perceive what they do. Because obviously an answer is like making money for our clients, but it's like, there are interesting things they could say about their role in the financial market and like how they make markets more efficient or they provide liquidity or whatever. Like people give interesting answers to that question. So it's a very naive question, but I do like to ask people like, what is your function? what do you do at a high level?
Given that, let's end it with that. What is your function?
So I think it has evolved over time, but I think of what I do as like, what I really like to do, and I don't always succeed in this, but it's like what I strive for, is I like to explain financial market stuff from like a first principles approach that is like, one, accessible to my readers in tech who are not finance people, but who are interested in systems and understanding things, but then is also worthwhile to my readers who do the thing. Like, if I'm writing about Indian options, I want it to be worthwhile to people who trade Indian options, not because I know it better than they do, because they know it better than I do, but because I can take a broad enough perspective that they can say, oh, that's like a deep way of thinking about what I'm doing that I hadn't thought of, but that like tracks with my experience. So I rarely, like mostly I make jokes about Elon Musk, but like that's what I want to do. That's like the really satisfying thing to do. And so that's the function I'm trying to fill sometimes.
Thank you. Well, look, I think I could speak for the entire audience. You're a phenomenal writer of all things finance. The Daily Read is amazing, and I genuinely appreciate, one, what you write about, how you write about it, and two, I really appreciate the fact that Doug Green introduced us and we got to meet, because that allowed me to meet your wonderful wife, Sarah, Mary Childs, and your fucked up boss, who I'm furious with. I was gonna plug his book, and you could tell Tim O'Shea, you could tell Till O'Brien, I'm not gonna plug his book, but thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, we'll end it. I want to thank my wonderful assistant, Michelle, who did an amazing job. And hold on, I don't want to leave anyone out. The people from Fordham who also did a wonderful job. Hold on. It's Danielle, Fran, Rose, Liz, Stephanie, and Heather. Thank you. We are done.